Okay, well, welcome everybody. I'm Dr. David Kamnitzer, and most people just call me Dr. David. I actually think the person who interviews me today actually likes to call me Dr. K. So it might be confusing, but Dr. K is Dr. David, and Dr. David is Dr. K. So if that's the most confusion you have all day, it's probably a really good day. So um, welcome. And this will probably be the first in a series of videos that I'm being moved to make to share with you. And just a thumbnail sketch of what this is all about and who I am, and to introduce the woman who's going to be interviewing me. I'm Dr. David Kamnitzer. Like I said, most people call me Dr. David. And for many decades, for many thousands of people, I have functioned as a holistic doctor, chiropractor, body worker, energy worker. Uh, I do a lot of work with customized nutrition and herbal programs for people. I help people with stress management, how to move their body more effectively, how to, and then for people that are interested, we go deeper into other dimensions of who they are and their relationship to their energy, to their instincts, to their emotions, to how their mind and belief systems work, to their relationships, to their communication styles, um, and their spirituality. Obviously, not everyone's interested in taking advantage of all that, but some people are. No healer or guide is the right person for everybody, or even if they're the right person for you, they may not be the right person for you at the right time. And so it's important to work with someone who has the maturity and the perspective to understand that and to respect that, and to really not set you or the guide or the healer up for failure, or for wasting your time or wasting your money, or just causing another trauma. That's the last thing that we need. So this is really all about an opportunity to get to know me, who I am, what I'm all about, to see if I might be the right person for you either now or later, or maybe you know somebody. Maybe I'm not the right person for you, or not now, but maybe you have enough of a sense of me that you go, oh, I think so-and-so would be perfect, and you can facilitate a connection. Because certainly we're in some amazing, unique times, and many of the old ways of being and doing things, I mean, the old ways of doctoring, the old ways of counseling, the old ways of coaching, old spiritual paths, old psychological systems, maybe they're not adequate to meet the challenges and certainly the opportunities that are ahead. And a lot of people are afraid right now. They're confused, they're overwhelmed, and they're panicking. And so sometimes they're making unwise decisions in their life, and especially with regard to how they want to spend their focus and energy and time and money with regard to the things that I do in terms of health and spirituality and things like that. And so you have a right to know when you're beginning to make a decision about who you want to have help you and assist you. You have a right, and I think almost a responsibility, to really check that person out and really know who they are, and to really tune into how you feel in that person's presence and what's moving in you. And it's really difficult to do that with 30-second sound bites or even 3-minute videos. So go get a cup of coffee, and let's hang out for a while. So I thought, rather than just listen to me yak for a while, it would be more fun and actually more valuable if I invited one of my dear friends and a student and a former patient of mine who has done a lot of interviews with me in the past, named Karmjit Singh, into the conversation, so that uh, she can draw me out a little bit, because I can go in so many directions, and I don't want to get lost in my own perspective. And Karmjit is a really good proxy for many of you, I think, for this conversation. So I'm going to turn the rest of the conversation over to Karmjeet to lead it. And then at the end, she'll turn it back to me and I will have some invitations for you. So Karmjeet, welcome. I really appreciate you being with me and being willing to participate in this project. So I'm in your hands.
Thank you so much, Dr. K. And thank you everyone who is joining us. Dr. K, this is an honor for me, and I'm glad I'm getting the opportunity to speak with you again. So just to get started, for those for whom this might be the first time that they're meeting you, you shared a little bit about all the different things that you do. Would you give us a little bit more of a background of what brought you to be doing what you're doing, whatever you think is important to talk about right now? What got you here?
Sure. So this could be a little bit of a long story. So rein me in if it gets too
Okay.
weird. Okay. So um, I'm a boomer. I was born in Los Angeles in the mid 50s to two Western European intellectual type people. No background in religion, no background in spirituality. I would say their God was the mind. And they were very caring, loving people, but they had experienced a lot of trauma in their life. World War II was a biggie for both of them. The whole Hitler thing, Nazi thing was a big trauma for them on many levels. And I don't think either of them ever really did the deep healing work to process that and heal that. And they sort of did the best they could. They were very dedicated parents within their own frame of reference, but I had no awareness of the realm that I ended up living inside of and helping people with at that time. Um, as a child, probably what was a little unusual about me was that I was really good at math. Math came really easy to me. And I didn't have the words for it at the time, but I was uncomfortable as a child, as a young child, infant, toddler. I cried a lot. And I realized now, many decades looking back, that um, I was a very sensitive old soul, and I was crying because there were no energies around that I liked, that I was familiar with, that resonated with me. And but of course, I didn't know that at the time. And so as I grew up and felt a little different from most people and saw things in the life that didn't make sense to me and things that people did that seemed weird to me. And sometimes I would notice that people didn't even feel that comfortable around me for some reason, but I didn't know anything about energies, frequencies, anything. So as I grew up, especially as I got into uh, my older childhood or my teenagehood, where being social was more important to me, uh, my ego really took over, and I became very judgmental. And I concluded, erroneously now, I concluded that there must be either something wrong with me, or something wrong with everybody else, or something wrong with all of us. Now, it turns out that that was not a very empowering way to frame my experience, but I didn't know that I had a choice at the time. And so I've always had a pretty sharp mind. So the combination of having a sharp mind and being judgmental was not very good. Um, and fortunately, later on in my life, I was able to turn that to my advantage. Maybe we can get into that conversation later if you want to, because I was able to transform my attachment to judgment to a commitment to become more discerning. And that's like the difference between going to hell and going to heaven. So that's a huge deal. And we can go down that rabbit hole if Karmjeet wants to. But anyway, so what I'm going to describe about me is a way I would describe it now. So when I talk about my early years, this isn't the way it occurred to me at the time. I'm going to describe it from my best sense of what was really happening from who I am now. So I realize now that, I was definitely tuned into different energies and frequencies and questions than most people, and certainly most people my age. And I realize now that there were at a soul level, there were really two questions that were really important for me to master and understand, not only for myself, but in a way that as I got older, my understanding of that, I would understand it in such a way that I could communicate with other people and help them with some of the same things. And so I realize now that there were really two questions that were driving me. One was, well, if there really is a loving God, and God really, we really are God's children, and if God is this very wise, loving, whatever, parent, if you will, how come he, she, it, whatever, would allow their children to have a world with so much suffering? How can I reconcile that? And then there was a corollary question that came out of that really drove my life, probably for the first 3, 4 decades, until I had satisfactory answers. And that was, how come some people are so happy, healthy, and successful? How come some people are so unhappy, unhealthy, and unsuccessful? In other words, is this random? Or are there principles? Are there laws of the universe? Are there laws of God? Are there laws of creation? And if so, can we learn them? And what's our role in that? What's the role of the human in that? What is the extent of our free will? And what is it we can really choose? And what is it we can't choose? What is it we have direct control over? What is it we have no control over? What is it we can only influence through the things we have direct control over? So this I'm describing to you from now what was going on, but obviously I was going blind through this. And so one of the things I'm proud of myself as I look back on my life is I must have had a lot of faith without even knowing it to go through this blind and not let the bumps of life stop me. And I think I also, looking back on it now, I would say I probably had some very good guides and guardian angels along the way, to such extent that it's probably pretty miraculous that I'm still on the planet. But of course, none of these things occurred to me that way at the time. And so this is what was driving me. I wanted to answer these questions. So to make a long story short, that took me in different places. It took me into studying different psychologies, different philosophies, both Eastern and West, to the point where when I was fairly young, I started to have a pretty good orientation to those metaphysical aspects of human beings, the psychological realm, more of the transpersonal or spiritual realm. And then as I got into my late teens and early 20s, I realized that if I really wanted to understand human beings, myself, what makes me tick, what makes other people tick, those questions, that I had a gap in my knowledge, is that I needed to understand more about the physical human body and how that related to these non-physical dimensions of human beings and how that all fit. And so let me back up. So from the time I can remember, I came into this life with a gift of being able to teach. In other words, if there was anything I understood or I knew how to do, I intuitively, I knew how to teach it. I didn't have to develop that ability in this life. I could teach, and even my teachers recognized that in school, and they would have me help the children that were having trouble. So that was a gift that I knew that I had from very young. But it wasn't until my early 20s when I started dabbling in the healing arts, because I want to understand the body better. So I started studying things like massage, deep tissue work, acupressure, things like that, flower remedies, herbs. And so uh, as I started doing that, because remember, the context in which I grew up in, there was none of this. But not only was there none of this, I didn't even know about this that there was none of. This was off the map. And so, but something was moving me to do this. And as I started doing this, I realized that I had some abilities that I didn't know that I had. Like I would take an acupressure class and the teacher would give us a map of where the points were. And I could touch and I could tell when I was on a point as opposed to not quite right on the point. So I didn't know anything. I didn't know that I had the ability to sense energy at that level or to move energy or to work with it. So that came online. And then I realized, I wanted to back that up with linear brain knowledge. And so that led into a deep dive into the human body, anatomy, physiology, chemistry, physics, uh, all the things you study to become a doctor. So I came into my study of the human body from this very broad perspective of wanting to round out my understanding of what a human being is, how human beings work, what breaks down, why does it break down, how does it relate to these metaphysical realms. If I do something in one of these realms, is it likely to influence another realm? And if so, are there any meta patterns I can start to pay attention to? And I started to round out my map of what a human being is. And I'm good at pattern recognition, so I started to see patterns and things started to come together and with this knowledge plus this healing gift that I didn't know that I had earlier, plus my gift as a teacher that I knew I always had. And then I've always had a real respect for the joy and responsibility and importance of um, thinking things through for yourself. And um, and a desire, if there was an area of life I wanted to master, a passion for going in depth to understand the fundamental first principles involved, so that I wasn't just a good recipe follower. I wasn't just a good technician, but that I could understand the principle and then I could transfer that knowledge into an infinite variety of specific applications. So there are other areas of my life where I'm not interested in that. Like I'm not interested when I turn on the light switch. I don't want to understand everything about electricity. I'm just glad that I can turn on the light switch. But people don't pay me for that, right? I'm not promising people's well-being isn't in my hands, so to speak. And so I take my responsibilities as a healer, teacher, guide, coach, doctor very, very seriously. And if I don't know something, I'll tell you. If I have an opinion about something as opposed to knowing it for sure, I'll tell you it's my opinion. I'm very conscientious about these different levels of knowledge. And I would say one of the unique gifts that I have, unique, not that other people can't develop it, but unique, like you don't see it much yet, is that if there's a question that I have that I'm committed to truly understanding, I can hold that question for decades. And I can live inside that question and explore it and not kid myself about that I got it when I don't have it yet at the level I want to have it. So in these areas where I really am committed to mastering something, I'm very committed to whatever it takes. I mean, unless I stop being committed to that area of my life. But I'm able to live inside questions without having to prematurely think I have the right answer just to have a false sense of security. I'm very aware of when something is a curiosity, when something is a hunch, when something is a pattern starting to emerge, when it's an opinion, as opposed to something that I would go to the bank on. And I think that's something that's missing in most people's lives. Many people are afraid to know they don't know. And I think one of the secrets of life, one of the secrets of spirituality, of self-realization, is to really not only accept, but almost relish the realization that there's something you know you don't know. Because knowing you don't know something and having it be okay that you know you don't know it is the doorway to true knowledge. Unless you're comfortable and can accept knowing you don't know, you don't have the space to know. And it goes against the way most people were educated, at least in my generation. We were rewarded for having the one right answer. But living with a mind that's always looking for the one right answer to all questions is insufficient to the challenges at hand today. There are certain kinds of questions where that works great. Like if I go onto my Android phone and I go, hey, Google, what's the fastest way to get to the nearest Pete's Coffee? There's probably one right answer to that at that moment. Okay. And so there's, but most of us are only trained to be with questions like those kinds of questions. And so we're that way with questions that way of being with won't help you. Because you don't know there's another way to be with questions. Like if you tell somebody, you know, sometimes it's useful to ask questions when you're not asking the question to get the answer. They'll go, well, why would you ask it? Well, there's a whole other way of being with questions and using questions. You can ask a question not to get the answer, but you can ask a question in such a way that the question creates a metaphysical point from which to view. And then you look out from that view that didn't exist till you framed the question. And that allows you to see whatever you see from looking out from that perspective. And if you're not committed to the right answer, but you're committed to seeing what you see, it can take you to some of those places that if you were asking the question because you wanted the right answer, it can't take you to. And so I would say one of my gifts is that I am very aware of when it's useful to ask a question to get the right answer, and when it's useful to ask a question where you're asking the question to create a new space from which to look out on and to see whatever you see. And when it comes to especially the spiritual domain, and to a large extent the psychological domain, to live that distinction and to have mastered your relationship to questions, for example, is extremely important. In fact, it's so important that you could make a really good case for that there's a very high correlation between the quality of your life and the quality of the questions you ask and how you be with questions.
So Dr. K, you shared there's so many different areas that I want us to be able to explore. So I know given what we're going to try to cover today, okay, we'll just start. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I wanted to pause on this moment because I think this is a great opportunity to maybe talk about what's happening in the world today, because a lot of people are asking different types of questions. And so could you share what is your take on what is happening today?
That's a great question. Perfect timing. And I'll give it to you the way I see it. So it's
Please.
important for you to understand that this is the way I see it. There's other ways of seeing it. Different ways of seeing it are useful for different things. So I'm going to share the way I see it, and then specifically the way I see it in relation to what we're doing here. So I want you to suspend your disbelief about what your belief systems are and just enter into a thought experiment with me. So imagine that that the earth and the people on planet earth are influenced not only by their own soul, so to speak, by physical laws that we understand, but imagine in this thought experiment that we're also influenced by a lot of consciousnesses and energies that are trans-terrestrial, changes in energy fluctuations in the sun, for example, solar flares, uh, uh, different types of magnetic pulses that come from the sun, and also energies that come and consciousnesses that come from even beyond our solar system. And imagine that there's a relationship between Mother Earth, our souls, and these energies, and that there are rhythms and cycles, and that there is an intelligence behind this. And imagine that we're at a time for the earth and for humanity where the ways of being and ways of thinking and ways of relating to each other and ways of relating to our creator have gotten us this far, but can't get us any farther. In other words, these ways of being and thinking and doing, they've gotten us the ability to have this Zoom call. They've gotten the washer and they've allowed you to have the washer and dryer you have in your home. They've allowed you to have your car. But maybe that way of being and doing and thinking and looking at things, maybe that's taking a huge toll on the quality of our health, on the depth of our relationships, on our sense of meaning and purpose, on our environment. And many people are very set in their ways to the point where unless they're really hit over the head, they're going to keep being the way they're being, doing what they're doing, and thinking what they're thinking. And so imagine that if you were kind of the orchestrator, the conductor of this fantasy. Imagine if you realized, hey, you know, I think these people to wake up, I think they're going to need some major high contrast experiences, both collectively and individually, so that they can be knocked out of their slumber enough to begin to question things they haven't questioned before. And so imagine that that's what's happening in your life, and that's what's happening in the collective life of humanity right now. And what you're going to be seeing, you're seeing it now, but if you're willing to see it, you'll see it more and more. You'll see an enormous contrast between those beings that want to control you. And we could go down that rabbit hole for hours, and we're not going to do that here, as opposed to the beings that want to empower you. And bottom line is that if you want to stay in a physical body on this planet and have a high quality of life and be effective, you're going to need to become more discerning about those two groups of people and to see within yourself those two parts of you. And as you heal and take responsibility and transmute yourself to the point where you become more and more of a conscious participant on the side of the light, on the side of those that want to empower, you're not going to be a very happy camper, and vice versa. But the thing is that one of the greatest challenges for people that choose the light side is that part of choosing the light side is letting go of your attachment to what other people choose, even though you're going to do everything you can to use your power of influence to inspire people. If you're doing it because you're afraid of what will happen if you don't do that, you won't be able to help anybody, because then you'll be in fear and you'll be part of the problem. So there's this incredible balance of total commitment and total non-attachment. It is a very delicate dance, and it's hard to learn. It's even hard to learn with a good guide, and really hard to learn on your own, because this idea of total commitment, total non-attachment, it's hard for most people to really grok what that's all about, and to be the kind of person that can live that way.
So
So
before we
does
get
that help to does that story, does that drama help to open up some possibilities and ways of seeing that might be empowering?
it does. It does. And I want to actually continue that conversation, but I want to back up a little bit and actually dig a little bit deeper on, what might be the current experiences of people. So I get the sense of, that the orchestrator, the conductor, would
I think I get what you're saying. So you
yeah,
might be eating foods that are genetically modified,
okay,
that are messing up your divine right, so almost to have uh, your DNA unfettered.
okay. So meaning that's one of the things that could be happening. Okay.
You might be getting multiple jabs that are doing similar things.
Okay, vaccines. Okay.
Yeah, well, let's not use the V word. Okay,
Okay.
all right. And then um, you may be getting your information from media sources that are doing the bidding of the controllers. You may be getting health care from people that are doing the bidding of the controllers. You may be getting education, or your children may be being educated by people that are doing the bidding of the controllers. And it goes on and on and on and on. You take pretty much any area of life, and as you wake up more and more, uh, everyone needs to go through this phase of being shocked to the core, of to the extent of which we've been duped without knowing we've been duped. And usually the initial response is shock. Then after that is tremendous anger and rage, and then tremendous fear. And going through that process is part of true healing at a very deep level. And without a guide to help you, you can get aborted in any step of that journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do you um, see as so many of those things definitely are causing fear. And another thing that I think is causing a lot of fear is AI and what is going to happen in the
Sure,
world
sure.
across.
So the relationship, how do you have an empowering relationship with technology? This certainly isn't the first rodeo for humanity to look at that. You know, but it certainly is an opportunity to get it right this time. And another biggie is our relationship to finances, because that's been one of the main targets for those that want to control you. And most people are so traumatized in their relationship to money that they don't look at it, which is exactly what the controllers want you to be, so traumatized that you don't study the issue. So that's another huge area. Water quality, what's in your water, in your tap water, the controllers again. What's being sprayed in your skies, again, the controllers again. Um, uh, Frequencies of musical notes have been slightly altered to create dissonant frequencies for you. Again, the controllers.
When you say controllers versus empowers,
Yes.
um, Can you break that down a little bit for
I'd rather
people?
just, I think it's better to leave it at that. I think that is really an empowering way for people to look at it. Imagine that you're, imagine that you're a character in a play, and
Mhm.
maybe you are also the director, maybe you're also the writer, maybe you're also the producer. But for now, just imagine you're a character in a play. And whoever wrote the play, imagine that the purpose of the play is for you as the character to get better and better and better at ferreting out what are the energies that are empowering energies and what are the controlling energies. And then what team do I want to be on? And why do I want to be on that team? And how do I be on that team? Imagine that that's what it's all about.
Mhm.
Imagine that at another level of who you are, you chose to be a character in that play so that number one, you could master that distinction. And maybe for some of you, you could then help others. If you look at it that way, it's pretty, well, that's not that complicated.
So,
It's the same ability to discern that within yourself and others. And once you realize that that's what you're after, and you realize the value of mastering that, that opens up so much, because now you know what the prize is. So it's a lot easier to stay focused on the prize.
mhm,
One of the things the controllers want you to do is to get so fascinated with the shiny object of the day that you forget what the prize is. You
mhm.
forget what the point of the game is. There are all these red herrings. Like, are the Democrats right or the Republicans right? Are men better? Are women better? All these red herrings where the answer, there's no answer. There's no answer within that frame that makes any difference. You're just rearranging the furniture on the Titanic. And if I was a mean doctor, healer, guide, and I wanted to make sure you never healed and woke up, that's one of the ways I would do it. I would get you so fascinated by questions that don't make any difference that you don't have any bandwidth left to really make the main thing the main thing. And if you know what the main thing is, it's a lot easier that you'll stay focused on the main thing, especially if you're convinced of the value of winning that game.
Mm. So let's imagine for a second that some of the people who might hear your message are individuals who've been on their own healing journey, and they've been exploring things, and they've noticed that they are committed themselves to light, okay? And when they look out in the world and different things that they experience, it's hard to tell who else is truly supporting the light and is controlling, because both sides or many sides, they seem to have similar stories and similar colors that they show, and because everybody seems to have access to the same tactics and stuff, so it can be hard to figure out who exactly is a controller, who exactly is the empowerer. What would you say to people who are at that place?
I would say that I'll answer it in three different ways.
Okay.
And feel free to interrupt me at any time. One is, it's good to become more sensitive to energy, because everything is frequency, and the light has a certain frequency and the dark has a certain frequency. So I would say that's one thing is, we could talk for hours about how to do that. That's one thing I would say is try to get beyond your thinking mind and your imagery, and get to more of an essential essence of the thing, which is a certain frequency. to really open up to the idea that everything in any dimensional universe,
Mhm.
why things appear unique is differences in frequencies. Okay. Number two is rather than committed to trying to be right or make somebody else wrong, to have a more direct relationship with reality with a capital R and actually observe what is bringing out the best in you, what's bringing out the best in others, and what's bringing out the best in situations and what's not working. In other words, rather than being committed to being right, and I think maybe this is something you maybe even have issues with, is rather than being so concerned about not getting it wrong or getting it right, play a game where imagine that those concepts don't exist and look out from a different place and go, how's that working? How's that way of being and doing and thinking and acting working for me? How's it working for people I care about? How's it working in this situation? Well, if it's not working, maybe there's something I need to shift rather than going, is it right? Is it right? Is it wrong? You know, so that's a big thing. Commitment to workability. So we've talked about tuning into the energies, being more sensitive to energies. Number two, being more committed to workability than you are to being right or avoiding being wrong. In fact, let me go on a little tangent here. Honestly, honestly, how much of your life and how much of the lives of people you know, if you look at it non-judgmentally and honestly, how much of what they do, what they be, what they don't do, what they don't say, what they do say, the choices they make, how much of that can be illuminated by the possibility that a whole hell of a lot of that is driven by their attachment and commitment to avoiding being wrong. Well, do you want it to say it you want people to say it your eulogy? Oh, Karmjeet was an amazing person. She spent her whole life committed to avoiding the domination of being wrong. And it sounds so silly, but if you actually take off the blinders and you look at what drives you, a lot of what drives you and what drives other people is an attachment to looking good and a commitment to avoiding being wrong because that doesn't look good. And what if people took all of that energy that they put into avoiding the domination of being wrong or having to be right and keeping score in their head all the time, like there's some cosmic scorekeeper? What if they took all that energy and put it into a commitment to increasing workability? In reality, that's number two. And number three is there are 7 words that represent particular frequencies that have a natural resonance to empowerment and to the light. And you have to work with them in a particular order because each frequency creates the foundational resonance for the possibility for the next resonance. So I can give those 7 to you now, but we don't have the time in this conversation to deeply get into it. Okay?
Yeah, please.
Unity. And just getting into that for a minute, you know, Jesus said you can't serve 2 masters. Well, you can't be committed to unity if you're committed to duality. So I'll leave that there. We could go into that for an hour. Unity. Number 2, love. Number 3, life. Number 4, respect. Number 5, honesty. Number 6, justice or true balance, fairness. Number 7, kindness. So one way you can stay on track is what you're being and what you're doing. Is it honoring unity? Is it honoring love? Is it honoring life and workability? Is it respectful at a profoundly deep level? Is it honest? Not like honest, like 2 + 2 is 4, although that's part of it, but a deeper honesty, like what you're about, what your commitments are, what you stand for, what your promises are. Balance, justice, fairness. Like when you go into an interaction with someone, are you wanting to get one up on them, or are you wanting what is balanced? Are you a victim and you're wanting to get screwed over, or are you wanting balance? Because the universe will find a way to balance itself eventually. You just might have to get hit over the head. But if you listen to the whispers, you don't have to hear the screams. And then kindness. How much of that has gone out of our personal and collective lives? Just basic kindness. When people are afraid or panicked, what happens to basic kindness? Kind of goes on the back burner. And without basic kindness, the sweetness kind of goes out of life. A genuine smile, someone who really cares, someone who'll have the tough conversation with you because they really care, someone who's really kind, someone who really cares about themselves and other people and workability, basic kindness. You know, how do you treat yourself when no one's looking? Just because you love kindness, it's part of the resonance of the light.
Those are actually, I love hearing those because the reminders of each of those to be able to practice them on a regular basis is absolutely critical. And I'm also reminded of what you said a little bit earlier about judgment and discernment. Would you kind of include
Sure.
that as like possibly a number 4 or even part of
I
these?
think we need to define those terms,
Please.
first of all.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm just going to take a deep breath because that is a whopper topic.
Okay.
So I'll start out by giving you an example of a judgmental statement, and then I'll give you an example of a discerning statement. Ready?
Yes.
Judgment statement. That music is terrible. You're assigning terribleness to the music. You're making it an inherent property of the music. Like that music is bad. You're making the badness a function of that thing. Okay. So that means that people who like that music are wrong. And you're right. Discerning statement. You know, right now, listening to that music isn't working for me. I'm feeling a little anxious and nervous. I'd rather be more peaceful. I think I'll put on another piece of music or just turn the music off. One leads to hell, one leads to heaven. One is hell, one is heaven. One is honoring who you are in that moment. The other one's just getting lost in right, wrong, ego, judgment land. Closes down your heart. Doesn't honor love. Doesn't have no respect. There's no respect there.
One of the things I'm noticing is that when I asked the question earlier, how to be able to tell the difference between the controlling and those that are empowering within yourself and outside in the world, is to become more and more aware. And it's like, it's not a one and done thing. It's a regular, ongoing, every moment being aware.
It's a commitment. It's a commitment. You stand for that. You stand for being what you want to call it, a disciple, whatever. You stand for the light. It's like, I am the light. It's like you declare, I am the light. I am the light. I am, I am, I am. I am the light. Just like some people could say, I am the dark. Okay, so they have the right to use the power of the I am to say, I am the dark, but there's going to be consequences to that. Just like there's consequences when you declare that you are the light. If you really declare that, what you're going to see is you're going to see all the illusions of darkness you've created. And it's really hard to be with that without a guide, because your default setting when you see that is to go into judgment. And now you're in a downward loop, and that gets so painful that you lose your commitment, and then you go back to whatever your default setting and addictions are, until that becomes really painful. And then you go back and forth, and you dabble in the spiritual path, you dabble in your healing, and you can do that for a long time. Incarnations. That's why the road gets steep and narrow as you continue. And that's why having a good guide can really help, can save you a lot of time and a lot of suffering. I should have a t-shirt that says time saver, suffering minimizer.
Okay, yeah.
How is this hitting you?
It's
As a person, not as an interviewer. How's it hitting you?
so when you said, declare yourself that some declare themselves as a light, others declare themselves as a dark. When I heard that, the first thing that came to mind was, well, I'm not sure if the people who might be controlling, if they're actually declaring themselves as the dark. They might be thinking that they are being the light.
But that happens all the time. Most people, we call them sheeple. If one of the main strategies of the dark is to have as many sheeple as possible.
Say more, because I'm not sure I follow.
People that don't even know enough that they have the power to choose to stand for the light or the dark. They're just get blown in the wind. They're at the effect of all of these intentions and technologies and frequencies that are being generated. And until you take your power back, you're basically just you're just reacting, unconsciously reacting to all of these forces that are using you, that you don't even know are using you. In fact, that's one of the main strategies of the dark, is to use you in ways that you don't know you're being used. It's like I always say, the most secure jail is the one people don't know they're in. Mm-hmm. In fact, a lot of what the spiritual path is about is non-judgmentally discovering the jails that you didn't know you were in, that either are self-created or unwittingly you agreed to them. And this gets to your question. Is most of the jails we're in, we unwittingly agreed to, mostly as a child. And until you realize that you agreed to them, even though you didn't consciously know you agreed to them, and you stop judging yourself and others for having agreed to them, then you can unagree to them. Then you can take a stand. But if you try to take a stand before you do all that, your stand really isn't a stand. Your stand is really just a clever dodge to avoid seeing what you've agreed to that you didn't know you agreed to, and then overlaying it with something to try to make it better. And that's where the courage and the faith and the consciousness comes in. And it's at that level where working with an experienced guide is really worth its weight in gold.
So can we talk about that a bit, about what to look for, when you're considering, a guide? Like, what are some things
Yeah.
that you
I
want to
think
be
that I
aware of?
think the most important thing,
Mhm.
and maybe this runs into a catch-22, because we talked about many people not being sensitive to energy, is I would say the most important thing is, how do you feel? Not like surface feel. When I say feel in this context, I'm talking about your energy. At an energetic level, what's occurring for you when you're in the presence of that person?
Mhm.
Not what are your thoughts about them, not what are your opinions about them, but what's your sense of presence? What's your sense of, is something deeper happening for you that's not where you usually live? And does that interest you? Are you attracted to that like a moth to the light, or do you just want to head for the hills? It may not be the right time for you, or that person may not be the right guide for you. But sometimes it's like, I don't know what that guy's smoking, but I want to know more about that.
Mhm.
Pay attention to that. Don't discount that. Be open to your intuition. You don't have to have it all figured out to pay attention to your intuition. Give your intuition a little breathing room. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to find out, oh, nope, that didn't work, but give it some breathing room. You'll get better at it. It's a natural ability to sense energy and to be intuitive.
So people who might be saying, like, I felt resonant with somebody before and I followed that path and it didn't lead me where I thought it was going to. What I just heard from you right now is that, hey, is that then you kind of learned what didn't work, or you got to
But it could be even more subtle than that, because maybe maybe that person that you resonated with, maybe they were able to take you from point A to point B,
Mhm.
but then they thought they could take you from B to C, but you stopped following your intuition.
Mhm.
That's more like it.
Mhm.
It's like maybe that person, hang on a sec. Hang on a sec. Um, maybe that person really believes they can take you from B to C, but they can't. But by now, you've just trusted them and you've stopped paying attention to your intuition.
Mhm.
I got to put this on pause for a sec.
Okay.
Okay, so by that time, maybe you trusted that person and you stopped following your intuition. Maybe you started to have a fixed idea about that person instead of paying attention to your intuition. That's more likely what happens. There are a lot of teachers that think they can take you farther than they can take you,
Mhm.
but maybe they can take you from A to B. And so you go from A to B, you go, that's really great. I'm going to trust this person.
Mhm.
And you
So,
stop paying attention to the energy. You stop paying attention to your intuition. And when something stops working, you start blaming yourself. Well, I just have to be a better student. Well, maybe they can't take you there. Is that a great example?
yes, and I'm also reminded that if we give our power away to the other person to take us to a certain place, so that's why we would be stopping, trusting our intuition. Is because that we've now just given everything to this person that we resonated with, thinking they'll take us there. But so we've given our power away, so we don't want to do that at all. That's what you're recommending. Is that accurate?
Well,
But trust
I
that.
would, if I was on the dark side, I'd recommend that.
Okay. Explain, please.
I would recommend that you give your power away.
Yeah.
That's what I would highly recommend that.
Right. But on the other side, don't give your power away is what we're saying, is that even the person
No,
who can take.
I'm not telling people what to do. I'm not telling people don't give your power away. I would recommend you don't give your power away.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not trying to control people.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to tell people what to do.
Mm-hmm.
That hasn't worked. Just talk to your mother.
Mm-hmm.
She tried to control you. That didn't work. so, so, so what's the first commandment, right? Thou shalt put no false gods before God.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ever turn a person into a god. The how to have an empowering relationship with a guide is a fascinating conversation.
Mm-hmm.
How to be a good steward of your relationship with your guide is a fascinating conversation. And how to be a good steward as a guide is a fascinating conversation beyond the scope of this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I see this happen in AA all the time, where people get involved in AA and they get tremendous value out of it the first 2 or 3 years, because it does take them from A to B. But then it starts to get a little stale and flat, and they think they're just not working their program enough. But it's because it's an incomplete spiritual path. It can't take people beyond a certain point because it's based on a false premise. But the false premise is useful to get people from A to B, but it's not a completely true premise. So it can't get people from B to C. But most people don't say, hey, I guess AA can only take me from A to B. And they make up all sorts of stories about themselves, when maybe that system or that teacher just can't take you any further. Because AA is based on the false premise that I am an alcoholic. That's not a completely true statement. So you have a whole system of thought that's based on a premise that can't handle the truth. But unless you're a weird person like me, you don't pay attention to that. We don't question our premises unless you're a weird person like me. The beginnings are very delicate times. They frame what's possible. The quality of the questions you ask and live inside frame what's possible for you to access. And what the dark side does is have you ask questions, the answer to which doesn't make any difference. Is red better than blue or blue better than red? The answer that whatever answer you have there doesn't make any difference, because there's no context to the question. Is anger good or bad? There's no answer to that question that's useful. Maybe if your kid is running in front of a bus, it's really useful. So people ask questions, the answer to which doesn't make any difference, except it's worse than that because it distracts you from the questions that could make a difference. And you could say that life mastery or wisdom is all about being able to tap into the difference that makes the difference. And to simplify things more and more to first principles. And then let the mastery of those principles spontaneously transfer into all areas of your life that make a difference. But that takes some real commitment to go that deep in understanding. You've got to go through a lot of, you've got to be okay with a lot of, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Most people aren't okay with I don't know. And most people are not okay with paradox either. And it turns out that two of the guardians of real truth that you need to be able to become comfortable with for self-realization is confusion and paradox. If you can't be with confusion, you'll never get past it. If you can't be with paradox, you'll never get past it. Because if you're looking for the one right answer, you'll never do it. You'll never get past it. You'll know how to get to Pete's Coffee fast, but in terms of self-realization or profound peace and high level of workability, you can never have it if you're being within that frame. And see, we're thrown to be that way just by being born into an unenlightened culture. You're thrown to be thrown into these mindsets, these boxes of being and thinking, that once you're in that box, your options are limited. And so if you try something and it doesn't work, you might think, oh, I just need to do it more, or I need to try a different option, or I need to do it better. But maybe you're living inside a maze that no option within the maze is going to work. And so maybe you have to begin to question, what maze am I in that I don't know I'm in? But if you're honest and you ask the question, your first honest answer is, I don't know. So you've got to get to a place where you welcome, I don't know. You welcome not knowing. That not knowing is the doorway to knowing. Being able to accept and embrace not knowing is the doorway to knowing. But that's really hard if you've been ostracized when the teacher says, asks you a question and you go, I don't know, and the teacher gives you double homework. Then to be a person that can embrace not knowing requires a lot of courage.
And so right now, given what's happening in the world, so let's say you already have been dealing with and experiencing the I don't know and all of the heartache that comes with that, and then now put the societal things that are
Well,
happening.
I want to challenge that statement. I want to challenge that.
Okay.
You were asserting that there's a heartache that comes with knowing you don't know.
If
And I want to challenge that. I want to go, I don't have heartache when I know I don't know something and it's important to me to know it, I become curious. So I want to challenge that premise.
So I want to clarify. I'm sharing that if you're not coming from the place that you're coming from, okay, and you are a regular person who hasn't walked the path that you have walked, okay, and you are recognizing that, hey, I don't know a lot of things. I've been trying lots of things, and there is heartache, there's fear, there's a lot of angst associated with that. And now on top of that, there is a lot of fear in the world. So, first you don't have this I don't know and all of that. Now you put on top of this all this other stuff. It can be very overwhelming. Okay,
well, that's why this designed overwhelm makes a civilization ripe for all sorts of dictatorships, concentration of power, communism, fascism, because people are afraid. And because people don't know how to be with the fear or be with the not knowing, they're easy to manipulate.
Mhm.
Uh, but the good side is that gives me a job,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In other words, seriously, in other words, what I am is the possibility of a possibility outside of that. And what I offer people in relationship is I'm extending a hand to them. And I'm going, if you're interested in exploring the possibility of a possibility outside of that samsaric suffering you're describing,
Mhm.
uh, maybe it'd be a good idea for us to talk further.
Mhm.
But as you imply, within that maze, there's no option that works. So the beginning of the answer to how to master that is to begin to consider the possibility that you've been living within a maze that either you created or unwittingly agreed to, such that within the maze, none of the options are satisfying. Because that begs a powerful question. What mazes did I create and agree to that I don't know that I'm inside of? But of course, the first answer to that is I don't know. That's why it's good to have a guide, because as you imply, that I don't know could throw you into another loop
Mhm.
of freaking out because another thing I don't know.
Mhm.
See, this is a really key point, what we're talking about right now,
Mhm.
because right now highlights the value of a good guide. Because awareness without acceptance is just more hell. You could take that to the bank. If another thing you become aware of, in this case, I don't know what maze I'm in, if that just becomes another piece of fodder for judgment, you're going to suffer more. And then you're going to go back to your Haagen-Dazs or whatever your addiction of the month is.
Mhm.
This is really where the rubber meets the road.
Mhm.
And it's important for me, for people who are considering wanting to really know who they are and really wanting to experience high levels of peace and peak performance. I feel it's my responsibility to not do a bait and switch on people, but to let people know what they're getting into. And you're going to be opening up some Pandora's boxes, and you don't want to open that up unless you're committed to going through it and there's somebody that can help you. Some of the people that suffer the most are the people that dabble on the path. And they say, why is Joe Sixpack so happy? He hasn't read one damn book on self-help or spirituality. And he loves his six pack. He loves his buddies at the bar. It's like, as a society, we're way too cavalier about this journey. We're much more concerned about taking care of our car and learning how to take care of our car than we are about taking care of us, or even what isn't us, what isn't me. So it's like sometimes I feel like, Jesus said, don't cast pearls before swine. In other words, don't offer a gift that someone can't appreciate. But that's why I'm not here for everybody. There's a lot of other people that can take you from A to B. lot of people, a lot of people can take you from A to B. And that's fine. Maybe that's all you want. But there's a subset of people that have a burning desire to know truth with a capital T. And then you might want to ring me up. But it's important to know, it's like, and also, there's no should about it. I want to say that. There's no pace you should go at in self-realization. There's no one path that's better than another. There's certain paths that are steeper and can be faster, but they have a hotter fire. And those are the ones you really need a good guide for, because you can get burned. And and my path is, I'm part of the lineage of that faster path that really gets into first principles. It's radical in the sense of the true definition of the word radical, meaning root. It's a radical path. And you still have to deal with all the other things you deal with in the slow path, but it's a hotter, it's steeper. It's a hotter fire, so it's more important to have a good teacher if you're on the fast path. But it's not better to be on the fast path. It may be for you, but it may not be for you. And if you're being that it should be for you, you've missed it. Because then you'll never know if it's for you, because you're lost in should land. And that keeps you from your intuition too. Being lost in should land. Lost in should land. Lost. Imagine, maybe I can leave people with this. Here's a thought experiment for you that's very powerful if you do it sincerely and honestly. Imagine you're going to get up in the morning and imagine that you've been brainwashed of any concept of should or shouldn't. How would you know whether to get out of bed? What might get you up in the morning? And if you got up in the morning, how would you know whether you wanted to go get coffee or you were going to go brush your teeth? How would you know if you were going to check your email? How would you know if you were going to go outside? How would you know if you were going to exercise? How would you know, how might you guide your life without shoulds and shouldn'ts? Is there a deeper commitment or stand or purpose or passion that could move you, that could get you out of bed? That's a good thought experiment for going a little deeper beyond where most people tend to hang. Could you handle the responsibility of living that way? Could you handle that degree of freedom? Could you handle that much responsibility? Could you handle that much power? And you don't want to do that all at once. You don't want to give a slave their freedom, their total freedom immediately. That's why we don't have it.
I know that whenever we have conversations, Dr. K, I feel like, I can talk for days with you, because I love these conversations, because they open up things in me every single time, no matter how many times we've talked. However, for those who might be wanting to know, like, hey, I'm feeling something, like I'm resonating with some of this, and they want to possibly explore something with you, how can they find out more about you or to connect with you?
Well, what I like to do is, because I don't know if we're a good fit either.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to waste your time, my time, your money. I don't want to do that. Nobody's for everybody. What I like to do is I like to offer a complimentary half an hour conversation. And fortunately now with technology, we can do it anywhere. People can be anywhere in the world that they have access to the internet. We can Zoom, we can do WhatsApp, and let's get to know each other more. It's important for me to find out why you want to talk to me. Do you have a particular passion? Do you have a particular concern? Is it primarily a physical concern? Is it primarily metaphysical? Is it both? Are you going through a crisis? Are you just wanting to um, elevate your performance in something? You know, I don't go into the conversation thinking I know. I want to understand. And so let's take a half hour and explore that without further commitment. Because once I do commit to a student or a patient, it's a very, I take that as a sacred commitment. And I expect things also from the student or from the patient as well. So I think that's a way I like to go. And in the future, I think I'm going to create survey forms also that people can access, that they can fill out, and then basically it gives me permission to get back to them on the things they said they were interested in. But for now, um, I think giving people probably like my email address would be good. Um, and because just about everybody has access to email, and just put in the subject line requesting 30-minute comp session, and then tell me what you want to tell me, and then I'll get back to you. So if you want to get a pen or make a note of this on your smartphone or whatever, or my email address is my first name, David, and then a dot, like a period, and then my last name, and I'll spell it for you. K-A-M as in Mary, N as in Nancy, I, T as in Tom, Z as in zebra, ER at gmail.com, david.kamnitzer@gmail.com, david.kamnitzer@gmail.com. And, all great journeys begin with a single step. And before we close, I want to invite you as kind of a proxy for people that might be watching or listening. I just want to give you the space and time that you would need to share. I mean, you shared in general that you enjoy these conversations and you get value, but it might be helpful for the viewers and listeners if you were willing and able to share more specifically, one or two or three things specifically, personally, in relation to your own journey in life that you feel this conversation might have opened up and made a difference for you in. Something you saw in yourself, a possibility you sensed, getting caught with your hand in the cookie jar moment, anything that you think might really substantiate what you were claiming, that you had gotten a lot out of this conversation.
Yeah, I'll share a couple of things. One of the first things that I'm always amazed at is how easy it is to get your hand caught in the cookie jar and not even know it until you're having a conversation with someone who has created a possibility, and we're having a conversation, and through that conversation I come to realize, oh, I had my hand caught in the cookie jar. And so though I've been on this journey for a while, before Dr. K, before you, as well as like with you, and like outside, and I've experienced and I've been exploring, because I feel I am totally committed to this. And at the same time, I continue to get my hand caught in the cookie jar. So there's value in having access to a teacher, a guide who you can come back to help you through that. You may not even be sure of actually what's going on, but you just know that something's going on, and it's through those conversations. Sometimes they are pointed and very direct, and that can be helpful. And then at other times, one of the values that I get is sometimes we just explore because I need that space to be able to explore. But then there's times when you are um, much more direct, and sometimes that can be hard to handle at times. But then what I have found is after the fact, I'm able to be with that, and I'm able to see, okay, what was it that I was not willing to see during the conversation? And it's not that I always agree with everything that you say, but at the same time, there is truths that I feel get revealed to me through our conversations, through our journey, through the guidance that you've provided. And I think that's what's coming up for me right now. So I always do value these conversations because something new does get opened, does get shifted for me.
I was just wondering if there was something specific that opened for you.
Well, to me, all of that is very specific, okay, but it may not be in your view, but to me, that's very specific. But perhaps one thing that I'll share is going back to the frequency part. So,
Okay.
what you said about that, that if you're not sure what is who is controlling, what is empowering, that one way to be able to be with that, just start noticing your frequency.
Yes.
You start becoming more sensitive to that. So that is a great reminder, because we can get caught up in the world very easily. So that was a very good way to once again ground myself, to be reminded of that, and to practice that.
Right. See, that's a specificity that is a specific application, whereas before you were talking about a principle that
Okay.
that you notice over and over again happening.
Mm-hmm.
So you were specific, but you were specific to a principle or a
Okay.
pattern, a meta pattern, rather than specific to something that is concrete.
Yes, I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah, and people relate to those differently,
Yes.
and you touch different people when
Yes.
you speak in those different levels. So I'm really glad that I followed my intuition to invite you to play with me with this, because it turned out far better. By better, I mean a higher level of service and more fun than it would have been if people had just listened to me yakking for an hour and a half. So uh, you have a gift for this, and I'm grateful to be a beneficiary of this. And I think it's a form of your service that I hope you allow it to expand over time, because I think you have a gift in this area that you enjoy and you can help a lot of other people. So just in closing,
Uh,
again,
could I interrupt just
oh,
one
sure.
second? I want to, in case somebody is not sure, we talked a lot about, on the spiritual side. You also help people on the health, because you are a chiropractor. So I just want to make that distinction for anybody. Could you just speak to that in just a
Yeah,
2 minute? Like,
yeah.
what are the different things you help people with, so they know, like, oh, what's their options with you?
It's so broad, but um, you know, if you're looking for, and I'm not against drugs or surgery, but they only do certain things. So if you're looking for non-drug, non-surgical uh, uh, practices and products and things that can help you to um, either get out of pain, have a higher level of function, uh, could be anything from a specific discomfort, or a specific uh, health condition that you're having that you would like support in. Uh, it's so broad. It's so broad. I get everything from car accidents to the most esoteric. So, I had a patient yesterday who turned out that they had frequencies that corresponded to 3 different kinds of infectious energies. And, it would have been almost impossible. It'd probably taken tens of thousands of dollars to figure that out. But we were able to do that. Immune support, digestive support, uh, uh, it goes on and on and on. Back pain, neck pain, headaches, uh, uh, low energy, low libido, um, issues with body composition, weight, blood sugar challenges, endocrine challenges. It goes on and on.
Okay.
But it's basically looking for, if you're a person that believes that that your body isn't stupid, that your body's intelligent, and that it's doing the best it can given the set and setting to help you survive. If you believe that, and you believe that there are ways to cooperate with natural laws and principles to become healthier, and you want someone who's been helping thousands of people for decades, get in touch with me. A lot of the work I can do long distance. Some of the work that I do needs to be done in person. But I have a lot of people that do some of the work with me long distance from all over the world.
That was actually really, really helpful. So now
Yeah.
people know that they can come to you for a variety of things. And then that 30-minute conversation, in that they can explore, what they're
Yeah.
looking for. Okay.
Oh yeah, not everybody who comes to me is ready for or interested in a deep spiritual dive. It just depends what level of wellness you're after and what your idea of wellness is. I never try to force things, period. But in particular, I never try to force anything on a student or a patient. One of my prime directives is to honor free will, and to help people actually is make their own choices. And some people have actually probably not made a free choice in their life for a very, very long time. They're not used to being respected at that level. Some people are very uncomfortable being respected at that level, but there are other people that really are craving that, almost like a coming home kind of a feeling.
Yes. And so could you once more share your email address and then your closing thoughts? Because I think that was so helpful.
God, this is getting to be like a late night infomercial.
Please.
All right. And once again, okay, David.Kamnitzer, DAVID dot KA, M as in Mary, N as in Nancy, ITZER at gmail.com. And if you email now, no, I'm teasing. For the first 10 people that email,
That's funny.
you'll get 2 for the price of 1. Again, part of the controllers, right? Wanting you to do things on their timetable, not encouraging you to discover your own rhythm, right?
Any closing thoughts that you want to leave people with?
It's really an honor and a privilege to have the opportunity to share what I've learned on my journey with people that are ready and willing and desiring. And my function as a healer and a guide, it doesn't define who I am. And I take those offices very seriously. I take the commitments I have to my students and to my patients very seriously. I don't take every student. I don't take every patient. I'm not for everybody. But if I do take a student and I do take a patient, I'm working with that student on many, many levels, way beyond what the student knows. So it's a commitment. It's a deep commitment for me. And so I want you to know that I don't take myself very seriously, but I take my work very seriously. And I would encourage everyone to consider that distinction in their own life. Is what if you took yourself a little less seriously and you took your commitments and promises more seriously, but you didn't define yourself by your roles, but you did commit to your commitments. It's a delicate balance. Make less promises, but be more committed to your promises. And you'll be a happier camper and things will work better. And you won't say, oh shit, why did I commit to that? And then you'll do it out of obligation and it won't benefit anybody. So I'm looking for the people that are looking for me. I'm looking for the people that are ready for me. I'm looking for the people who are resonating with me. I'm looking for the people that their soul is hungry for the possibilities I can help catalyze. But nobody should work with me, if you get my drift. If you work with me out of a should, it won't work. You'll go back to the Haagen-Dazs when the fire gets too hot. Give yourself a break and don't turn me into another should in your should story. Treat yourself with more dignity than that. Don't make me the next false god in your play, but be open to a whole new play. So with that, we'll close with love and peace. Bye for now.